Hey, everyone, make sure you like, thumbs up, subscribe is a big one, especially if you're watching on YouTube. This live feed, we need more subscribers, so if you could do some subscriptions, that would be great. Give us all that good stuff. Facebook, large loves, share on Facebook. We do provide decent content, and we're not asking for much. If you could just help us out, we'd appreciate it. Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Robert with the world-renowned Mr. Texas Real Estate. This is the Texas Real Estate Mastermind Hour. All right. So hopefully everyone's doing really well. We're actually having a pretty good week around here, so I'm all freaked out that, when's the karma kick in, when's the other shoe drop, but I'm going to enjoy it while I can. For those of you that understand what we do with Mr. Texas Real Estate, I'll give you a little background, so maybe you haven't heard this. And is that camera clean? I'm going to talk into the camera right now. Hey, if you're on the radio, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a little Instagram 60-second thing. So you're listening on the radio, but I'm going to go ahead and do this because we have a camera in front of me. So, Mr. Texas Real Estate. When we started Mr. Texas Real Estate back in 2019, my partner and I, Jason Bible, and I'm Robert Orfino, we decided that we were going to do marketing first. And what were we going to market for? Two things, deals and money. And if we got good at that, then everything else will fall in place. So we started marketing. Again, we did Facebook Lives every single day. We did radio show very, very early on. We've been on the air, I think, 4 years now. We're going into our 5th year, so we're super excited about that. But we market it first, right, guys? A lot of folks will spend a lot of time looking for a deal, and for us, we decided to go the other way. We were going to look for money. And so Mr. Texas Real Estate went out the gate looking for private investors, private lenders, figuring all that stuff out. And what we did was, right off the bat, we got into construction. We knew that contractors were going to be the number one hurdle for us, so we started a construction crew. And that crew grew into a company. And now we do just about every aspect of the job we can handle. So we have a pretty big construction company that no one's ever heard of, and we're going to do close to $7-8 million in construction this year. From there, we had to figure out long-term financing because we were buying and holding. So what we decided to do was to go out there and start working directly with hedge funds to provide us some lending for long-term lending. Now, we still use a lot of local guys and private guys and hard money lenders for the short-term stuff, but for the long-term stuff, we knew we had to get that under control, figure out that process, so we did that. On top of that, we did some Airbnb. So what we figured out was, hey, the manager is going to take a lot of money, so we built a management company. So Mr. Texas Real Estate does marketing, it does long-term financing, it does construction, and it does property management. Now, all of that is really, really tricky to figure out, right, and to manage on a day-to-day basis. And here we are in year 4, and it's finally going smoother than ever before. And who would have thought we would be able to survive COVID with everything we're doing? But that's what Mr. Texas Real Estate does. If you want to find out more about us, come to our events. Go to mrtxrei.com. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm on the radio. That's awesome. All right, so that's what we do. And we just wanted to really work on the vertical. And there are a few other aspects, like we really need a pest control and a lawn care, right? Landscaping company. And I know people are like, why do you want to get into that? And it's like, well, here's the deal. We get a letter from the city that says, hey, you got to go out there and cut this in the next 7 days. And by the time the letter gets there, we got a day left. We're working with 4 landscapers right now, and we're lucky if one of them will call us back within 24 hours. That's just the nature of their business, right? These are the guys that are affordable. So we look at the model and say, hey, we can do that. Not this year, next year. Air conditioning. It's probably the one big thing that we don't handle, and we know we can. And we will be, in 2024, we'll absolutely start an air conditioning company, and we'll be able to put this stuff in at a reasonable rate. It has climbed so high now that it's pushing the margins of a flip or pushing the margins of a hold. So we like to control the vertical. We want to have our fingers in everything. So we can actually pick up the phone and someone will answer on the other side, right? Our biggest problem working with some of these subs is that they never call us back. And, if there wasn't conflict of interest, we'd want to do a lot more. But, legally, there's only a certain amount of things we can do in our vertical. And so we've kind of really pushed it. And an HVAC company and a landscaping and a pest company are probably next. That will be 2024. Okay. So, all that being said, we do a little flip class. We do it with Jet Lending. And like right now, we've got 3 loans in with Jet Lending. They're fantastic. Like I said, we'll use the local guys, the hard money guys, to help us out with the flip. So we've got 3 in. We just closed 2, I believe. So we're moving along with Jet. We're super happy about that. But inevitably, when we do our flip class, we do it once a month here, someone's going to ask us about ground up. So, ground up. There's 2 people on our staff that have done ground up. I've done a 54 unit ground up, and these were big McMansions, like selling for between 3 and 6 million, right? I work with a developer back east. And then we have a partner in our construction company, and he's done, over 1,000 ground up. He's done condos in downtown. He's done a lot of infill. He's done a lot of tract development. And so we look at this stuff, and we're like, yeah, it might be time. And then last night, I was talking to someone who is doing it, and we might want to bring him in to help us with some of our stuff. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ground up today. And I want you to understand. First, let me tell you why you shouldn't go into ground up. And this is a big thing for us. So there are a lot of house flippers out there that can't find deals. And like I said, the HVAC guys pushing the limit, the plumbers pushing the limit. God, roofing's so expensive now. So their margins are getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And they're like, well, why would I do it? Hey, on the last one, I only made, $4,000. I could have worked at Lowe's for 2 months and made the same amount of money, or Home Depot for a month on a forklift. And what they'll inevitably do is say, well, why don't I do ground up? Right? I can get a lot cheaper, and I can do ground up, and I've got some connections. And the problem is, ground up has to be run, if you're going to think of it from a flipping standpoint, you must run ground up at a 50% ARV. Whereas a lot of folks are going to go to ground up thinking that, hey, if I can do it at 60 or 65, wow, that's a lot of margin for me. No. The problem with ground up is the holding cost. And the cities. And there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of requirements these days, especially if you're doing it within the greater Houston area. Now, if you're doing it outside, if you're up in Huntsville, if you're down in Victoria, if you're out in Sealy, maybe not as many requirements as, if you're doing something in the Heights. But there is just time for the development, right? There's Division 0 and Division 1. You got to clear the lot, you got to cut the roads, you got to lay the utility, and that becomes a problem. Now, if it's doing infill, and I know a guy out in San Diego that has done fantastic with infill, we have a lot of those utilities right there. When we come back from the break, we're going to get more into ground up. Again, I've been a part of this. If you want to learn more about this stuff, I would absolutely come out to our 3-day class. Go to mrtxrei.com. And I'll make sure that we spend some time this week, 2 weekends from now, talking about ground-up construction because it is a hot topic. All right, guys, hang out. We'll be right back. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. This is Robert with the world-renowned Mr. Texas Real Estate. This is the Texas Real Estate Mastermind Hour. We're talking about ground up. So who shouldn't and why shouldn't you do it? If you're a flipper that can't find deals and think that ground up's going to be easier, you're in for a heck of a awakening. Not good. Now, if you understand there is a learning curve to everything new in your life, and you can put up with the first 2 or 3 and go through the learning curves and understand what's going on at the city, then yes. If you can get past the first 3, you'll do okay. Myself, I've been part of a tract development, 54 units. I have worked on some infill, and our partner here in a construction company has done over 1,000 ground up, so including townhouses and small apartments. So we can do it. We can do it at a decent rate as a developer. So let me break down a couple of the things I just said. Infill versus tract. Okay, so tract is what you think it is. We have a house in Texas City under contract, and I drove past a massive field that is dirt's being pushed around, and I'm like, oh, there's going to be tracts right there, meaning someone's going to go in. D.R. Horton. I'm from the Northeast, so and California, for those Hovnanian, right? There's going to be someone going in there, and they're going to install the utilities, cut the roads, obviously level everything, move the dirt around, put it to the elevations that make sense and are needed by the civil engineer team. Then they're going to go ahead, and that's Division 0. Then you're going to lay in your utilities, right? So you're going to get Division 1 going, and you're going to have, some stakes in the ground, and some people can kind of visualize, oh, yeah, this is where the house goes. And here is utility, box. And we laid our utilities underground, so it's all good. That's tract. Okay? With tract homes, there's more development. There's more cost because you're just basically taking it from a fallow lot, right? A fallow field or a wooded lot, and you're making it ready for the contractor to come in versus infill. So what Jason and I have been doing, and I think we talked about this once, is we really, really like houses on big lots, especially if it's cut the right way, if it's laid out the right way. So I bought 3 houses on 3 lots, but I know there's enough room to make 4 lots out of it. He just bought 1 house on 1.5 acres, and it's really weird the way it's laid out, but he can get 6 lots on there and saving the house. So now he's got 5 lots, and we're buying them, at appraised value, right, of what the market value. So what's happening is I got a bonus lot for me for nothing. I actually have like 3 of these, and Jason's got 6 now. So in that scenario, hey, there's already plumbing, there's already sewer lines, there's already electric and gas in certain places, and there's a school district and there's a road, and we can clearly put the addresses on there so we can infill those lots. Infill, depending on the cost of the lot, is going to be cheaper. And so what we're doing is we're finding, and we're looking at a couple right now, saying, hey, okay, and I'm just going to make up a community. Okay, Baytown, what is the minimum lot size in Baytown? Well, if it's got, city sewer and city something, it's going to be 7,500 square feet. Okay, that's all I need to know. Then we go in our search and we look for lots that are 15 to 20,000 square feet, half an acre. And we find these half an acre lots, and we look at it on Google Maps, and we say, okay, yeah, there's a way to lay out a second lot there. But we're going to buy this at appraised value or less because we negotiate, right? We fix it. We get that one up and running. And then while we're doing the renovation on that house, we get someone to come in and subdivide the lot. So at the time of refi, it's no longer a 20,000 square foot lot. It may be a 10,000 square foot lot. But the house has got value, and we've done the upgrade, and there's a rent on there. And if everything works out, knock on wood, we're going to get the value on the refi plus a free lot. That's our infill strategy. Again, if you want to learn more about that, come out to our 3-day class, MRTXREI. MR as in Mr., TX is in Texas, RE is in real estate, and I is investor, MRTXREI.com. It's a whopping $97. And all we do is we basically make you drink from the fire hose. We give you lots and lots of information, not a lot of clapping nonsense. We're just going to get into it and figure out what's going to be best for your strategy. Now, for the longest time, our strategy has been buy it, rehab it, rent it, refi, repeat, right? The Burr method. Just constantly doing that. And I've done that now, oh boy, to the tune of like 78 doors. So we got some 2 units and 3 units. We got 8 units and 12 units, right? So I got about 80. And then just in this last year, because we knew that there was going to be a surge in ground up, it's not here yet, but it's going to be a surge in ground up, we started looking for infill lots. On some of these now, we're finding them for, very, very little. So what do you want typically in our numbers? We want to pay no more than $5,000 for some of the places that we're going for the lot. Now, everyone's going to charge you more. I don't see very many lots out there for $5,000 or $6,000. But again, if we're buying a couple acres and we can split it up, all of a sudden those numbers make sense. So for sure, Jason and I have been eyeing infill. And an infill strategy based on subdividing a very large piece of property that we buy with one house on it or even 2 houses on it. So we have this land laying around in a lot of places. I think, let me see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 6. So we're like at 12. We have 12 infill lots that between Jason and I that, right now we're in the middle of renovations and we have our replotter out there figuring out what's the maximum that we can benefit from here. And we're creating these new lots and creating new tax numbers to the lots, and we're getting ready to build up. Now, we already know the model. We already know what the house looks like. It's a very simple house. It's either a single family or it's a side-by-side duplex. Not very complicated to build. We hope to be able to build at about $100 to $125 a square foot. Strike that. We're going to be building from $125 to $150 a square foot on an infill project. Even if we were able to get all 12 going at the same time, probably the best number that we're going to be able to get is $125 a square foot. Now, we come back from the break. I'll break all that down for you, but we're still talking about infill. Now, the track is, hey, we're going to go buy a big, huge piece of land, 40 acres, 50 acres, 60 acres, right? And you're going to need to subdivide that. And that becomes the big thing, right? So that's why we start breaking out phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? We lay it all out. We have a master plan. And we start executing. Now, there's lots of ways to profit from that, and there are lots of different ways to do that with tract homes. You can cherry pick the best lots and develop it yourself. You can sell off the B lots, if you understand what I mean by that, to pay off your debt on the first lots. There's a lot of ways to work those numbers out. What we want to be able to do is to pick up a nice big piece of acreage and break it up. Okay, when I come back, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about this. Now, remember, if you're finding this useful, if you understand that I've actually done it before and Jason has actually raised millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, then you understand, hey, we're actually real estate investors that are doing it, not just talking about it. So we want to make sure that you guys are coming to our classes, looking at our events, getting into our building. Go to mrtxre.com. MR is in Mr. TX is in Texas. RE is in realestate.com. You'll get a link to our Eventbrite page. You'll see all the events we want to see you here. All right, hang tight. We'll be back. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Robert with the world-renowned Mr. Texas Real Estate. This is the Texas Real Estate Mastermind Hour. All right, we're talking about ground up because everyone's talking about ground up. But most of the people that talk about ground up are people that can't make flips work. And I know that sounds harsh, but most of the conversations I have about ground up are the guys who just couldn't get flips to work. So that's not a good sign. If you couldn't succeed at flipping a house, that should not be the motivation for you to go into ground up. Developers go bankrupt. Okay? So I want you to understand that. Period. Developers go bankrupt. Right now, there are lots of developers going bankrupt who can't pay the note, who didn't have a cap on an interest loan, right? And the money's going up. There's a whole bunch of reset that's happening. Unfortunately for you, you may or may not be aware of that. And so you may not even understand the opportunities that are sitting in the marketplace. You can if you come to our 3-day class, MRTXREI, at theionforinvestor.com. It's $97, and you're going to understand what is actually happening in this marketplace. We're not waiting for a crash. There's a crash happening right now, and it's on the lending side. So, I don't know if you saw, there was a big $240 million foreclosure for some Class A properties here in town. Someone just sent us the PPM for it, and we're reviewing. They were quoting 100 and over 100. I may be wrong, but I believe it was on average over 20% a year. So I look at it, it said 5-year yield 128%, and my first thought was, boy, that violates FTC. He really has to have shown previous work that did over 20%. And I'm getting into legalities and all that nonsense. You don't have to worry about that. But a couple years ago, there's this pro forma putting out there. There's a PPM put out there. And today, just last week, it got foreclosed on. Now, and then there's, of course, like all the negative talk around it. And I hope that guy just went BK, and tomorrow he's out there doing it again. Because here's what you don't understand if you're not in the game at a high level. People go bankrupt. They file for BK, and they take the protection provided to them by the law. Now, is that a good thing? No. But there are circumstances like the Fed right now that have raised the interest rates so quickly, right? Quickly and aggressively, that have pushed interest rates off the table. So if you didn't have the right type of financing available, you're in trouble. And it's not just onesies and twosies. It's a lot. Speaking of the word lot. And so what's happening now is we're seeing multifamilies go, commercial properties. There's a big hit in commercial properties, office space. There's a multifamily apartments, and there's some stuff happening with land. So let me explain. Rob, why don't you do ground up? Because I didn't buy land 5 years ago. That's usually the first thing I say. Oh, you got a construction company, you're doing $8 million a year? Yes, we are. Wow, why don't you do ground up? Well, I didn't buy land 5 years ago. Therefore, why would I do ground up now? And then people are looking at me, they don't understand. It is very hard to go on LoopNet or on Zillow or HAR, hit the land button, find a piece of land and say, oh, that makes sense, I'll start developing it. Now, if you did that 2 years ago, COVID accelerated a lot. So are we kind of kicking ourselves? We could have bought 128 acres down in Santa Fe. We didn't. We could have bought a 48-acre lot down in Galveston County. We didn't. So we're looking at it, but it works like this. Typically, when you buy land, it never makes sense today. It only makes sense in hindsight. So you have to figure out a way to hold land for a couple of years, preferably like 5, right? And then you can start development. And I was like, well, who would do that, Rob? Every single major developer in this country does it that way. The Howard Hughes Land Trust Company, smartest group you'll ever meet, because they acquired the land 50 years ago. And they rolled this slow development out because the land cost was so dang cheap, right? And now they can do refis to take the land out at present value because they're a massive corporation, right? Just one of their little strategies. Every developer is looking for that raw land, taking an option on it if they can get it, or doing some things like, option with an owner finance and a down. There's lots of plays in land. But the key here that we're talking about when you're doing ground up is you have to have bought the land some time ago. Because the price today usually doesn't make sense to build ground up. I have a lot of people that come to me, show me how to raise money, show me how to do this. Hey, my brother is a developer, my uncle did this, or my father did this, or, I've got a good buddy who does all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but the land, man, you've had to bought this years ago. There are ways around that, which is what we're looking at. We've been have an offer right now for an owner finance deal for 5 years and 20% down. And I said, go 7 years. Go 7 years, and if we want to negotiate a little bit on the money down, I'm okay with that. But if we can get that piece of property in for a 7-year owner finance note, man, I know by year 3 or 4 we'll be ready to go. Conversely, what we have done now for Jason and I buying this stuff up in the last year is we've bought big pieces of land with one house on them or 2 houses on it that we could cut up and subdivide. So, is it time to do ground up? I think the answer is it's time to buy land. I'm not certain it's ground up time, but I think it's time to buy land. Now, would I have been smarter to buy it 2 years ago when Tesla announced the Gigafactory and I could have ran out to Balthrop and all these other places out there and sort of, extreme west of Houston and east of Austin and picked up some land and did some developments? Yeah, it would have been really smart. And I know people did it. We weren't in the position to do it. So we can't look back that way. We have to say, where do we think is going to happen in 5 years? How do we limit the downside? How do we limit our exposure on all of this? And if everything falls into place, yeah, buy the land. Buy the land. So if you're with us and you want to learn more, come to our 3-day, mrtxrei.com. If you're in our mastermind and you're watching, yeah, I know we have a little Vanguard group in our mastermind now. It is time for the folks in the Vanguard group to buy land. Now, if you're looking for a quick 90-day turnaround, that ain't happening. But if we can buy with a little owner finance, and we can sit 2 years and wait for that progress. If we see that HEB coming, right, and we can buy in front of it, you can do that. We know there's not enough houses in this country. We know there's not enough houses in the state, and we know that the population of the state keeps growing. These are all the things that we discussed at our 3-day. We want you to come on out. Go to mrtxrei.com, mrtxrei.com. It's a 3-day class. It's a Friday night. It's a Saturday and Sunday. People will miss Friday night. We talk a little bit about mindset and understanding, what failures look like, what true failure looks like, how to succeed and persevere, right? On Saturday, we'll go through everything single family and the marketplace. On Sunday, we'll get into commercial and how to do some big-time syndications and fundraising. It is a well-rounded class. We want you to attend. Go to mrtxrei.com. Yep. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Robert with the world-renowned Mr. Texas Real Estate. This is the Texas Real Estate Mastermind Hour. So, ground up. I'll recap here. Jason and I have been buying very large lots that we can divide so that we can do some infill projects. Infill projects are going to be cheaper. Plus, technically, the land is going to be zero for us. Right now, there'll be a cost and the replot and taxes. I get it. Yeah. Right, but essentially, we've bought it for nothing. If we could get the refi on the existing house and it to appraise at the number that we bought it for, if that makes sense. So we buy a house for $100,000, we put $50,000 in, it appraises for $200,000, right? And the subject to appraisal, buy it for $100,000, put $50,000 in work, and the sub to appraisals at $200,000. That's a 75% LTV deal. Now we subdivide the land. We do a really good job on the rehab. We get a tenant in there, or maybe it's a duplex. We get 2 tenants in there, and it still appraises at $200,000 or higher. We have gotten the land for free. We think we have done that now for 12 lots. So infill will be great. Now, tract development, we're looking at it. We're looking at it hard. But we're looking for owner finance. Now, we make a joke about single-family owner finance, and I always say owner finance is really designed for commercial. It's designed for professional real estate investors that understand the ebb and flow of the marketplace and what we're going to do. So if we're going to buy a tract of land, we're going to make sure that our downside is covered, meaning our exposure is limited. And we're going to buy it, and we're going to have, an owner finance note on it, or, for at least 5 years. I would prefer 7. And then we know over time that we're going to be able to get in there and go, right? Because it takes about a year to really get your civils done and to lay it all out and to submit it to the city. It takes a while. It's not quick. And then it's going to take, 6 to 9 months of pushing dirt around and chopping trees down. So in 2 years, even if we start it today, we're not really ready to build for 18 months. Now, people who've done it before, I can do it much quicker. I totally get it. Yes, you can do it quicker. Yep. We have not done it before, at least I have not done it before here in Texas, and my partner hasn't done it for, I'd say, over 5 years. So we got to dust off the contact list and find out if, hey, these civil guys are still working, who's cutting, who's moving dirt, who's doing the trees, all that stuff, right? Who does the land clearing? So we're going to have to rebuild those relationships. Now, if you've been doing it for the last 20 years, of course you could do it quicker. You have relationships. That's what this whole business is about. But for us and anyone really starting out, hey, man, probably 18 months. Nah, Rob, I can do it in 12 months. Okay, good. I'll do it in 12 months. But for us, it's going to be 18. And for some of the people who have never done it before, it might be 2 years. And that's why I'm saying that's such a long amount of time to do a tract development if you're first time out the gate, that you could lose big. The market could shift like it has. Right? In the last eight months, the interest rates have gone crazy. So imagine a guy who has a loan that's tied to prime on land. And he was, 3.5 a year ago. He's at 3.5 plus maybe like 1.5 for the bank, right? So he's at 5%, and he's happy. 5%. This is good. I can hang out for a year or two. I can go, no problem. And all of a sudden, boom, he's at 8% now. He's at 9%. And it's just taking and taking and taking it, squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. And so finally, he can't make those payments anymore. He's going to lose the property. He's going to go BK. When the music stops, the developer is the first one to lose a chair. They're the first one to lose their seat. And I've known that for decades. So I'm a little bit hesitant. Listen, and if you know developers, and I'm not talking about, the big guys, right, KHAV and all those big companies, right? I'm talking about the middleman, right? The guy who goes out and does 24, 40, 150, whatever. Those guys are pretty bold. They're all sort of cut from the same ilk right there, right? In the same fabric. They're pretty bold. They want to go. And they do. And sometimes they'll take private money and combined with bank money. And if the market shifts and they haven't got to the point where they can help out and get to the ground up part, right, they're done. How many banks are actually lending on ground up right now? Not a lot. So let's say you bought that lot 3 years ago and you did your development and you cut your roads and you put your utilities in and you're like, I'm ready to build and the market's doing great and nobody's going to give me money. That's a problem. So there is an exposure there. And if we're going to do it, we need to figure out, what's our appetite for loss? What do we feel comfortable with? Managing the downside, right? If we can manage the downside, then there's only upside. So, do I think we're going to do ground up right now? No. I think this time next year we'll be doing a lot of infill development, and hopefully we'll have acquired some tracts, some big acreages. So, it's time to do ground up this year? No, because interest rates are too high and nobody's really lending on it. But once that gets settled, I would do the infill first. And then I would do some tract development. But the catch of all this, and if you've been listening for the last hour, is to be ready to do the tract development in 2 years, you have to buy today. Except you're not going to get a lot of bank money on it today. So we're going to have to find owner finance, right? Or come up with a bunch of dollars to put an option on it. To buy an option. Hey, I'm going to buy a 3-year option on this. If someone comes in to buy, I get first right at the money at the price that I've agreed to, and I'm going to give you $30,000 now, non-refundable option. So you can do that. So if you're thinking about ground up, today you're going to buy land. Next year you're going to do infill, and the year after that you'll start working on those tracts. But you're going to have paid the civil engineers. You're going to have to pay some designers. You're going to have to talk to groundwater guys and all this, and you're going to have to get it ready to roll. So it's a lot of work. And it only, again, if it was in hindsight's 2020, if 2 years ago I went out there and I bought that 64 acres, 128 acres, I'd be in really good position going into next year. Like I said before the break, there's not enough houses in Texas. There's not enough houses in this entire country. So yes, people are going to start development, and they already have. The interest rates now have put a halt to all of that. But if you're not lining up the land now, or figuring out how to get some free land through the what we're doing, we're subdividing. By the time the money is there for the development, you're going to have a problem because the land's going to be too expensive. And that's the problem with development, right? Again, you can't drive down the Grand Parkway and look at this massive development, 300 homes going up, and think you can do that. Because that land was acquired ages ago. Ground up is not about the construction, it's about the land. And you have to get really good at that. And it takes 3 years to figure all that out. Now, I got a bit of a head start. My partner has a very, very big head start. And the other partner, wants to go. He's being pretty aggressive. So I'll just end with this. We talk about this at our 3-day. If you could get some infill now, I'd be picking it up. If you can buy a tract on owner finance or put an option on it, I'd be seriously looking at that. But just remember, there's no one really lending on this today. So this is the serious stuff that we talk about at our 3-day, at all our events. Make sure you come. MRTXREI is our 3-day. MRTXRE.com is our webpage. It'll take you to all the events. We'd love to see you here. Let's have some serious discussions, and let's do this the right way. Thanks, guys.